Welcome guys to another video. Today we are still grinding for sticks because I want to have decent armor and I don't currently have enough emerald for that, and I have one fletcher. But I have this really cool setup where I can buy chainmail armor from the armor guy and then this furnace smelts it automatically, and I think that is pretty cool. I don't know, maybe you don't think that is cool, but like, that's your opinion. Okay, so I actually need to get to the part that interests people because I need to finish recording this before my sister gets back home. Once my sister gets back home, there will be 0 recordings being done because there will suddenly be at least one person bursting into my room at any given time. She just slammed my door wide open without prompting and then start yelling at me. Sometimes she dances, and then sometimes she just walks up to me and then stares into my eyes, like so deep into my soul, and then walks away. This is all unprompted, by the way. I don't know why she does it. I think she's like an anomaly from those horror games, but it's not really annoying as it is a daily jump scare. She does it with so much force. Like, she could put this much effort into her homework and she doesn't. So actually, talking about homework, it's literally the only thing I want her to bother me about. Out of anybody in my family, I pride myself in taking the highest level of math. Okay, maybe not the highest level of math. I think my dad probably took a higher level of math, but most recently. But when my sister has a math problem she can't solve, naturally she goes to nobody and doesn't even think to go to me like, hello? You don't have any problem with going up to me at any other time. Speaking of math, the only reason why I memorized my multiplication tables in 3rd grade was because of Pokemon. I was friends with someone who was a huge Pokemon enthusiast. She really liked Growlithe for some reason. I think it's because it looked like a dog and she wanted a dog. Who knows? So I liked Growlithe because she liked Growlithe. Because I'm a people pleaser. I'm not proud of being a people pleaser. Don't look at me like that. I know you're staring at me from the screen. Don't look at me like that. I think this was also around the time that Pokemon Go was really popular. We would play Pokemon during recess. Not Pokemon cards. We would play as Pokemon. She was Growlithe, and so I was also Growlithe because I didn't know any other Pokemon other than Growlithe. I might have known Pikachu, but I don't think I connected the dots that Pikachu is a Pokemon. I was a really lame kid now that I think about it. Back to the point, I had a second friend, and then she saw us running around on the playground just repeatedly saying Growlithe, and then she wanted to join us. But she didn't want to be Growlithe like the rest of us, or the 2 of us. So she wanted to be Eevee. And then so she was Eevee, and then we were Growlithe. Anyway, I didn't know a thing about Pokemon, but I still wanted to stay relevant in our little conversations and playtime stuff. So, as the chronic people pleaser I went home and then I searched up what an Eevee was because I had no clue. And then boom, I was introduced to the lovely world of Eevee evolutions. I would write them all down on a post-it note and then stick it on my wall, right in front of my desk. There would be, I think it was orange or pink, I don't remember. It was one of those really brightly colored neon post-it notes, and it was just smack right in front of my desk so I could see it. And then I wrote all the evolutions on it, and then I would memorize it. For example, I spent a good, I think, 10 or 20 minutes just going Eevee, and then Eevee Flareon, and then Eevee Flareon Leafeon, and then I'd go Eevee Flareon Leafeon Sylvia. And you kind of get the gist of it. I was just repeating the names over and over again so I can memorize it. Once I memorized all the Eevee evolutions, because I was at home, I couldn't tell my friends because I didn't know about online chat at that time. I didn't have anybody to show off to my new knowledge. I was so proud of it. So the first person who entered my house after I made this incredible accomplishment was obviously going to also be the first victim to my Pokemon-related bragging. And that victim was my dad. I was like, Dad, look, I can memorize all the Eevee evolutions and recite them by heart. And then I started reciting them. I was like, Eevee, Leafeon, Sylveon, Flareon, Vaporeon, I think. I don't even remember them anymore. And there was Umbreon, and then that other one. There were more. I don't remember. And then my dad told me, if only you put this much effort into memorizing your multiplication tables. So that's the story of how Growlithe during recess led to me memorizing all of the multiplication tables from 2 to 12. On top of being now an Eevee expert and a self-proclaimed Pokemon expert, I was also a bug catching expert. I raised roly-polies, I caught, what's their name? Oh, ladybugs, and any other critter that dared live in my backyard. How dare they be in the same space as me? I know. Anyways, I don't think I was all that quirky compared to other children, since I knew children who would catch and slowly drown wasps. I think that's significantly worse than raising roly-polies in a fish tank, which I did. No water, fish tank, empty fish tank. It had the sand in it, the fish tank rock thingies. I also liked catching earthworms. Okay, maybe I didn't like catching earthworms, but I just so happened to find an earthworm one day on the ground while I was playing in the yard. And then I think it had just rained, so there were earthworms everywhere. Kind of you know how it rains and then there are earthworms on the ground, visible earthworms, because it had just rained. As a Wildcrafts enthusiast who also just watched the earthworm episode very recently, I was so delighted. I could finally save this poor earthworm who was going to dry out on the concrete ground on which it was crawling, I was going to be a savior. I was going to be like one of those Wildcrafts. It needed hydration, stat, right? Because it was on the concrete. God forbid it be on the concrete, bro. So, since it was an earthworm, and earthworms live in the deep, damp soil, it needed water, right? Water, of course, because that's the most hydrating thing out there. So I took this potted plant that had no plant in it. It was just a pot of dirt. And then I placed the earthworm inside of it. And I named the earthworm Leafeon, which is why I had that Pokemon story earlier. That's why it's relevant. I then proceeded to pour a little bit of water in the pot of already damp dirt since it had just rained. And then placed Leafeon in that. In my little child brain, I thought that since the earthworm was outside of the soil for so long, it wasn't that long, it needed extra water to rehydrate. Just like how when I'm dehydrated, I also need extra water. So I poured more water in the pot. Of course, the earthworm tried to run because the earthworm had only come out of the soil originally because the soil was too wet because it had just rained. But unfortunately, Leafeon is no match for my child hands and speed, so Leafeon was forced back into the pot. Poor Leafeon. No, this is why YouTube exists. Childhood confessions. Anonymous childhood confessions. I think I have told at least one of my friends about this, so if you know about the earthworm story, don't oust me, okay? That night when I was eating dinner, I was so glad to have done this heroic deed of saving an earthworm. That was when my dad, who was coming in from the backyard where I had left Leafeon, said, "Wow, there's this random earthworm in a pot." And I was thinking, yes, that's my earthworm. That's the earthworm that I had just saved, right? I saved it from a dehydrated death. And then he said, the earthworm exploded. To this day, I still don't know why Leafeon exploded. I just searched it up on Google, and Gemini AI is pretty confident that earthworms can't explode from excess water. But either way, Leafeon is dead. And I was a murderer. Maybe I was an accomplice to a murder. Perhaps something else also aided the murder, but I was involved in it. Right? Anyway, this title is what it is because I thought it would be funny. And also, two of the war crimes from the list of war crimes are murder and torture, which I think I accidentally qualified for in my overhydrating and then subsequent accidental murder of Leafeon. If I was tried in a murder trial, though, I don't think they could sentence me to death or to many years because I had good intentions. Unfortunately, the good intentions were the only thing that was good about the actions and consequences of my story. R.I.P. Leafeon, you were my lesson that I should not have pets, at least until I do proper research about them and not accidentally kill them in an act of what I thought was humanity and charity. Anyway, thank you for watching my videos. As always, if you enjoyed them, please consider subscribing. My next milestone is 50 subscribers, and we will definitely have a 50 subscriber celebration. So if you want to see that, you should subscribe. And if you don't, you should still subscribe because I won't be that annoying. I only pop up on the For You page every time the date has a 2 at the end. So, yeah. Bye.